Tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks for being with us. We're here in this session to talk about Pākehā Myths and Legends, the stories that we can tell ourselves as Pākehā to maintain the silence about the nature and contemporary consequences of colonisation for Māori. I'll open with a poem first, and then introduce Richard and Glenn, and then our kaupapa. Ko Carl, Chenery tōku ingoa, he Pākehā. I'm Carl, I'm your chair for the session. This poem was written by Mitzi Nairn. Mitzi was the director of the combined churches of Aotearoa New Zealand's program on racism and was actively involved in anti-racism initiatives since the 1960s. Her and her husband Ray was part of Accord, the Auckland Committee on Racism and Discrimination. There's some great earlier webinars, interviews with Mitzi and others like Oliver Sutherland who are part of that too. Mitzi passed away in 2023, and her husband Ray has published a set of poems called Love and Social Justice, and this is just part of one of those poems, just to open us up. And this is called Giving Up the Habits of the Colonizers. I sit with you, my sisters, as we struggle with this task of learning to change, how to rid our minds of the colonial mindset. We, the inheritors, find embedded in the dream ugly skeletons. Begin to trace this lineage of superiority, supremacy, find ourselves with our foremothers, the appendages of the destiny to rule the world. Willing or unwilling, used and using, transmitters and messengers, instruments and receivers, vicious enthusiasts and powerless spectators, alike rewarded with privilege and inclusion. Like it or not, we've been there, done that, and we have to stop, because we're still doing it, still handing out more of the same, still acquiring, stacking up the spoils. How to give up the habits of colonizers, harder than giving up smoking, closer to giving up breathing. If the creatures who came out of the water eons ago could do it, survive the rasping pain of air in the lungs, replicated time and again at birth, so can we who tend to get the birthing jobs for ourselves and others over and over. Dispossession, destruction, denial are dangerous habits, all the more so when they move underground, leaving traces and assumptions. No longer requiring large gestures injected into the fabric of the colonized until they seem to impress themselves. It's really a trick of the light, white light. See, we even own the light. With Māori people, decolonisation begins with the mind, claiming a heritage of resistance, conservation and salvage, reversing and healing the destruction of language and culture. Mana Māori motuhake. Self-determination, the right to set the terms, to reassert sovereignty. We need to be more than spectators, more than supporters and encouragers. From the sidelines in this game, which is no game, there are no sidelines. Always good to have words from Mitzi when you're starting things off. I'd now like to shift and transition and introduce our guests, Richard and Glenn. I'm just going to speak to each of your bios before, and then I'll outline our times that we've scheduled for our time. So Richard is a professor of politics at Massey University, where he teaches courses on politics in Aotearoa New Zealand and researches the roles of political advisors in government. He has a bunch of academic publications, including the Edward Alger Handbook on Ministerial and Political Advisors, 2023, The Core Executives in a Comparative Context in 2022, but the books he most cares about are The Forgotten Coast, from 2021, and The Unsettled, Small Stories of Colonisation in 2024, shortlisted for the general non-fiction category at the 2025 Occams. both of which address memory and forgetting among the descendants of Pākehā settler families and the ways in which intentional historical amnesia is used to justify the ongoing consequences of colonisation. And Glenn Colquhoun is a poet and children's writer. His first collection, The Art of Walking Upright, won the Jesse Mackay Best First Book of Poetry Award and the 2000 Montana Book Awards. Plain God, his third collection, won the poetry section of the same awards in 2003, as well as the Reader's Choice Award that year. He was awarded the prize in modern letters in 2004 and a Fulbright scholarship to Harvard in 2010. In 2012, he was part of the Transit of Venus Poetry Exchange at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and in 2014 represented New Zealand on the Commonwealth Poets United Poetry Project, which celebrated the Glasgow Commonwealth Games that year. Ngā Wahine Toru, Three Women, and the Myths and Legends of the Ancient Pākehā, his examinations of oral poetry in New Zealand, was published in 2024. He works as a GP in Horowhenua. Welcome to you both. We had a chat beforehand. The structure for the rest of our hour together is to touch on a little bit more about how or why each of you are here and coming to this session. We'll talk a little bit about what Pākehā Myths and Legends are, what we're talking about, and before moving into some of the examples and what their function is. We might touch in a little bit about what's underneath these stories, and then finish off with some reflections on some of your journeys so far. So for those of you who are watching, feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat, and we'll see if we can weave them into the time that we have here and towards the end. Here's our community code. This has been up for all the other sessions, and there's been many other great sessions during this series, which I encourage you to go and check out too after this. So I'll just bring us into our first question. What's brought you here? What's brought you into this room? Glenn and Richard, I've outlined some of your background in your bios, but maybe you can touch on some of the prompts in your lives when you were invited to different ways of seeing, different sets of relationships, understanding yourselves and your families, or being challenged and needing to address and move past these myths and legends, and maybe hospicing some of them for others too. Who wants to jump in first?
After you, Richard, go for it.
Oh, I did that. Kia ora tātou, thank you. It's lovely to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to come and referencing your community code of ethics. Maybe be articulate, maybe not be articulate some of the time. Lovely, a privilege to share a digital stage with Glenn and with Carl and with others of you. I think the reason why I'm sitting in this room has something to do with a photograph that was on a wall in my mum and dad's house for a very, very long time. It was a photograph of 16 men, 15 men about to play football, one man who's the manager. They're big men, they're bandaged, they wear old rugby boots, which are laced up halfway up the shins. It's a black and white photo, it's a bit grainy. On the back of that photo, and I knew this for many, many, many decades, were three data points. One is 1881, the second was armed constabulary rugby team, and the third was Pangarehu Domain. Pangarehu, some of you will know this, is a small town on the coast of Taranaki, not very far from Parihaka. Anyway, I must have looked at that photo a million times and never really seen it until, for reasons which I can't properly explain, something to do with the death of my father, wheels falling off here and there, that whole thing sort of fell in place, and it became really clear to me that the story that the photograph had been trying to tell me for possibly 52 or 53 years, where there was somebody in my background who was involved in some horrendous incidents. And the person in my background is the man who's the captain of that team. He's the biggest of the big men, and he is standing in the back row and he's holding the ball. This man's name was Andrew Gilhooly. I mean, I knew he was my great-grandfather, but in my family's history, and Carl, just thinking about Mitzi's poem, Living Underground, or Being Under the Ground, This man played no part in my family lore whatsoever. Lots of stories about the Roman Catholic Church on the Taranaki coast, lots of stories about rugby, lots of stories about farms, sheepdogs, working dogs, all kinds of things. Not a single story about this man. He had disappeared. He had somehow or other become forgotten. One thing led to another, and over a period of time, and through the 3 books that Carl has referred to, what I have figured out is a forgotten story in which my great-grandfather, who travels out here in 1874 from the county of Limerick, the east of the county of Limerick, a man whose family had lived on land which had been confiscated by the English 200 years before he left the country, comes out here, joins the armed constabulary in 1877, builds roads, including the South Road, which runs from Hawara around to Ngāmotu, New Plymouth, is present for the invasion of Parihaka on the 5th, 1881, 5th of November, 1881, and then he's there for an occupation, 5-year-long occupation, during which more violence is perpetrated against Te Ao Māori, not only within Parihaka itself, but the whole coast of Taranaki. He goes away for 10 years, then he comes back, and by the time he dies in 1922, he and his wife, Kate Fleming, 17 years his younger, own or control 3 farms dotted around Parihaka. They're all on confiscated land. One of them is Māori leasehold land, which means that my great-grandfather had a lease in perpetuity to land that was owned by Māori but administered by the departmental official, the public or the native trustee. So there was these are unquiet stories, and I didn't know any of them. They had fallen right off the back of the sofa down into the dark parts, which I suspect all families have. And they've come back into the light, and now they seem to me to be the only things that are worth trying to make sense of. So I think that there is some mythology which my family involve themselves in or have done, and I certainly have subscribed to, and we'll talk about some of those things around the settlers and being one people and all that stuff. But the reason why I'm here is because I have a great-grandfather who was part of the rape of Te Pāua of Parihaka, and who has benefited from the dispossession of Māori land on the Taranaki coast, and therefore so have I. Those affordances flow from the past through the present and on into the future. So, Carl, I think that's why I'm here.
And you've written about that story, and then others in the Forgotten Coast and others wrote to you about that, and that was formed the basis of your next book on the unsettled, telling some of those other stories too. So you're engaging with others in that, and them engaging with you in that unlearning process too. Glenn.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Very nice to be here. Hi, Richard, Carl. And yeah, Richard, wow, what a fantastic story to mine, and you pull a thread and who knows where it leads. And I guess for me, I'm the simple reason I'm here is because I got asked to be here. And so I guess the question then becomes, why did I get asked to be here? And I suppose as a writer, one of the themes of a lot of my writing over 25 years has been essaying that cultural coastline between Pākehā and Māori, and I've written on that in lots of different guises, and I guess I wrote about that again because that was something I was always curious about growing up. I grew up in the late 60s and particularly the 70s in South Auckland, so at a time when South Auckland was transforming into a brown city. And by the time my younger sisters left school, the high school we went to would have been 90% brown. And so I was part of that generation. So for me, in a sense, even though the power structures I grew up on were unrelentingly Pākehā, I did grow up in a cultural coastline. I did grow up in between brown and white, and had lots of friends on both sides, and was always drawn in and out of those worlds to the joys of both of them. And that kept me curious later in my life. When I was at medical school, I took a year off, and that I was keen to, that initial curiosity from South Auckland, I think, had driven me to a deeper curiosity about Te Reo Māori. And a friend of mine took me to her papakainga, a papakainga she had married into, and suggested I stay there for some time to learn more. And that was at Te Manganui in Northland. And I went there, 30 years ago, and developed a set of relationships that have remained with me to this day, and that I still try to maintain. And I've written about that place many times, and the journey for me has been one of joy. People there were incredibly good to me. They saw this young Pākehā boy who they partly felt sorry for in a sense, because I couldn't look after myself very well, and I'd made a transition from the city into a rural area. But also I carried quite a bit of heartache. My marriage had just ended, and I think they saw that I was trying to put myself back together. And they, among some of my close friends, they were also nursemaids to putting me back together emotionally, really. And so I've written about Te Tiriti and the relationships there ever since. And then I guess in the third wave of my life, I've always pretty much, as a GP, worked in either iwi health or in youth health, in which we work with lots of young Māori, and my daughter now on her mum's side is Māori, so I'm the Pākehā father of a daughter who has whakapapa Māori. So all those different things, I feel, have meant that I always inhabit this space between Pākehā and Māori, in the surf of the great arguments of our country, and they always translate into personal relationship to me. And 99% of that time has been joyful and funny, and has made me want to write. And in the course of that, it's made me confront the histories I was taught as a kid. Yeah. I think that's why I'm here. Maybe someone's got a sore throat. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. There's a lot more richness, I'm sure, you can share about each of those, and as you say, Glenn, each of them connecting into personal experiences and personal stories. I wanting to move us to what we've talked about. You've touched on them both in terms of what we're talking about here in terms of Pākehā myths and legends. These are stories that are not true. We find to be untrue, often anti-Māori racist ideas that are used to blame Māori and distract from the policies that privilege us as Pākehā. Saying Pākehā myths and legends because they've been promulgated by Pākehā. That doesn't mean that Pākehā are the only victims of these myths and legends, of course. These beliefs are put into education systems here, taught and reinforced by institutions. And they're often ideas or beliefs in general that form blinkers that narrow our vision on what we can see or understand or see as a way forward. Often they're ideas that have been generated in the local context here, but also have had different variations and imposing a racial hierarchy in Ireland and Scotland earlier, in parts of England, and certainly used to justify other forms of colonisation, other parts of the world in ways that rhyme. What do you want to say about myths and legends? We'll get on to some of the examples and some of those that you've come up and seen and had to engage and let go let go of, but what do you want to say up front about?
Glenn gets first crack at this one.
I don't know, don't tell anyone. Let's just keep it between us three. I love myths and legends. You know, I'm a story boy. I grew up in love with story. I love them. I gobble them up from all over the world. And I think it's deep inside the human psyche, the need for myths and legends, which are, for me, and I know there's all fine definition. I don't want to get stuck in that. But to me, they're kind of like stereotypes we grow up with. And the beauty of them is they kind of start out with a kernel of wanting to say something positive. And then the danger is they then turn into concrete and orthodoxies, which are then don't ever get examined again. They become the end of an argument instead of the beginning. But I think it's deep in the human psyche to create, to simplify complex information coming into the brain all the time. We do it with our visual systems, our hearing systems. We create strong edges so that we can function more quickly in the world with lots of information. So I think myths and legends come from that sort of place. So I think they're part of the human condition. I think every culture has myths, and men have myths and legends about women. Women have myths and legends about men. Probably the biggest orthodoxy I broke out of as a child growing up was breaking away from organized religion and Christianity, which has a whole set of myths and legends as well. So I kind of like them. I kind of love playing with them as a writer because I think taking them and twisting them can tell us the danger in them is that we just accept them and don't see them as a stepping stone to help us break down complex information. And if we stop breaking down complex information, we surrender to other people's ideas. And there's a danger in that, and it dulls down conversation, and it reduces the rich variety of voices. Does that make sense? So I'm not a hater on myths and legends. Sorry.
No, I agree. I would entirely. I just want to talk about all of that. I would have very little to add to it because I think Glenn's nailed it. Maybe the one thing I might add is that I think the Pākehā myths that I think about, and it's probably not even a phrase, to Glenn's point about orthodox thinking that I would have used until maybe 10 years ago, are ones which do a job of work. So they are words and they're narratives and they're tropes and they're phrases and they're sense-making devices. But they're not benign, I think, the ones that concern me now. I mean, I have a really small stock, though, kind of 5 that I just find myself coming back to thinking, well, I used to think that was true. And now I realize the job of the myth in question is it does a job of work. It's not there by accident. Partly, I think, what some of the issues that we might go on to talk about do for me is they justify stuff that has happened here. They justify violence perpetrated against Māori. They justify the taking of land in particular, and some of the mythological language around racial hierarchies. You know, you harness the prestige of science to the colonial political project. So you bring in not only the regiments and the government departments and the governor and so on and so forth, but you bring in ideas and a vocabulary which has concrete consequences for the land on which that vocabulary and those ideas are deployed. But then some of them, as you said, Carl, kind of come out of this place. And some of those ones, the ones that are really powerful ones for me, and they were literally powerful ones for me, and they stop me from seeing some things, but they enable me to see other things, are the ones that we have created in this place to hide, or at least to justify some of what was done here in order that we might be the things that we are, but which also project into the future. And so I think the sense-making, Glenn just described as beautifully, the way in which myths and legends can simplify complexity. They're almost like a form of political code or shorthand. They just allow us to deal with lots and lots and lots of noise. But they also do a political and an emotional and probably other forms of work as well. They make some things possible and they shut down other possibilities. So I think they work at the level of the imagination. They also work at the political level, and they have a temporal dimension. They kind of wrap around the past and the present and the future. And I think the thing that I am most interested in when we use the language of Pākehā Myths and Legends is the ways in which they encode power, which is not symmetrically distributed around this place. So that'll be what I'd add to Glenn's words.
Well, I might transition us into what some of these myths and legends are. There are so many of these. And I'm just going to list out some of those that I've documented in myself and reflected on and worked through. The function is to distract from other policies, but excuse me just while I read these out. That Māori and others are the ones who have culture and I don't. That the Treaty of Waitangi is something for Māori rather than for Pākehā or others. That injustice, racism and colonisation are processes in the past. That New Zealand is having best race relations in the world. Of Māori as the noble savage. That Pākehā is a dirty word. That Māori separate development is something resembling apartheid. Māori raising issues about treaty breaches is a recent thing. That individual Pākehā supporting Te Tiriti being honoured is a recent thing. That Māori are the problem. That Moriori were a pre-Māori group wiped out by Māori, and this somehow justifies what the Crown Pākehā have done to Māori. You touched on this slightly earlier, Glenn. That Māori drifted into urban areas, and this was somehow not to do with government assimilation policies. The notions of good and bad Māori. That Māori are on a gravy train seeking redress for past wrongs. That white superiority or white supremacy, to use a more controversial term, is about groups of people wearing white hoods rather than systems or structures. Being a white saviour, and that Māori are here to be saved. That racism is just personal expressions of meanness. That the treaty is something between Pākehā and Māori, rather than the Crown and Hapu that provides a place for all who are here. That other ethnicities are migrants, but British or European aren't. That there are two texts of the Treaty of Waitangi and they say different things, or that they say different things. The treaty principles is a distraction. That it was the 1840 treaty that is it, when there's also he whakaputanga and tikanga. Few more here. The ideas of domination of indigenous peoples of the planet are recent and don't stem from a Christian religious worldview. That it was just Canada and Australia that had stolen generations. That these issues and the issues of colonisation are unique here. That settlements are solving these issues and I don't need to worry about them. That we are a little Britain in an Anglosphere in the Pacific. That it's Ngā Hapu or Ngāpuhi that are ones that are disorganised rather than the Crown. That capitalism and colonisation are separate processes. As Pākehā, we know better. And supporting the honour of the Crown. For those in the chat, you might want to comment on some of the ones that you see are more regular or ones that really grate you, or have a flip on. Glenn and Richard, what are a couple that you want to dig into a little bit more?
Oh, wow. The thing, and one of the greatest myths and legends is that we're going to deal with this in an hour, Like, we could just, it's an endless conversation, and also that we know what we're talking about. All I can speak to is my experience of the joy I've had in the cultural coastline, for most of my life. All I can do is speak from that joy. And I'm always super aware afterwards of dumb things I've said. So I'm apologizing up front. But, I guess for me that the past is the past is one. I work in health and I've learnt to see. And sometimes it's because I've worked in communities that I've lived in for a while, and because I'm getting long in the tooth, and you get to know the stories of young people. I work with that in adolescent health, but stories of young people and then their parents and then their grandparents, and find out more about the whakapapa of a particular young person. The more you can almost see illness being passed down generation to generation, that begins with an inequality, a great a reduction in somebody's beliefs and sense of self, and then like a domino, they get passed down through time. And I sometimes think one day I want to write about, and I have a little bit, but not published it, the whakapapa of illness passed down through generations. And I can almost see colonisation in some of my young Māori patients, like I'm taught to see bugs and autoimmune diseases and et cetera, et cetera. But, we see a lot of trauma where I work. And I think if you think the past is the past, sit with me for a day in our clinic and I'll show you how it's not. So it's very, very real to me. I see it every day at work, the effects of dispossession and the creation of an unequal society 100 years ago and more, and how it plays out. Of course, there's lots of other forms of trauma and stuff, but I definitely see, Mr. Colonisation show up in my clinic on a weekly basis. So that one really gets to me. And I guess from my early days, the big one that stopped me in my tracks, that we have the best race relations in the world. I was super invested in that as a young dude growing up. I thought we were wonderful, but in the same way that I thought we were wonderful fighters, and going to World War One was a really great idea, and the Anzac myths, but that myth that we had great race relationship, that sort of, I ran into a brick wall on that was one of the biggest first ones. And I started reading our histories, and yeah.
Yeah, the past is the past. That's a really good one, because I'm quite keen to know, although like Glenn, I would never have asked myself this until relatively recently, quite when the past finished. What is the year or the event or the date at which the past just was the past? And I find that kind of extraordinary now, but for 50 years I didn't find it extraordinary at all, because the function of that one, I think, is to allow us to say, well, we live in a permanent present. And to my mate June's comment in the chat there, kia ora, if the past is the past, then we don't really need to worry about what's going on today. We don't need to worry about Glenn's people. We don't need to worry about the fact that there's a woman, Wahine Māori mate of mine, lives up in New Plymouth in Ngamutu, who, in order to get onto the very small piece of land that has been left to the whānau after the 1,275,000 acres was stolen from them in 1875, has to ask the permission of Pākehā farmers, because her piece of land is landlocked. So that doesn't seem to be like the past either. That seems quite present, and it's going to have future consequences. So none of the things that occurred in peak colonisation have sort of stopped having any material effect on the world. And yet we still enable, and I should use personal pronoun, I still can live in this land for 4 years and think, yeah, for sure, that's the past. Until we get to Anzac, because of course that's not in the past. That's a different kind of thing. That's like an exemption to the rule. So I think the past is a really powerful one. The one I think that the one that really lands for me, another one that really lands for me, is the idea that we are all one people. I quite like this one for a couple of reasons. One is, it would never have occurred to me until relatively recently to ask quite what we meant by the use of the word one. So which people are we? Are we these ones? Are we those ones? Are we the ones over there? Are we something else? my sense would be that most Pākehā, if they think, well, yeah, sure, we're all one people, that stands to reason. The people they have in mind are sort of people like themselves. I'm pretty sure that most Pākehā don't have Māori in mind when they say we are all one people. The other aspect of that particular myth, which has really attracted my attention over the last couple of years, has been the history behind it. That phrase is often attributed to Hobson by William Colenso, but we know the history is pretty clear on this, that when Lieutenant Governor Hobson shook the hands of 45 Ngāpuhi rangatira on the 6th of Feb 1840, he didn't speak in English. He spoke in Te Reo Māori. He didn't say, we are now one people. He said, he wi tahi tātou. And he never used the word pledge either. There's nothing in the historical record, including in the only account that we have historically about what occurred at Waitangi, which is William Colenso's post facto account, published 50 years after the events in question. And in his account, William Colenso translates, he makes it really clear that what he's doing is he's translating Hobson. Hobson speaks in Te Reo Māori. Colenso translates him into we are now one people. This somehow gets picked up and turned into a thing. So we are now one people, notwithstanding that there is no solid history behind that, notwithstanding that Colenso was 80 when he published his memoirs. Hobson never said that. He spoke in Te Reo Māori, not in English, but it's become this very powerful creation story, I think. So that one also fascinates me. Lots of them. The other one we could talk about, but I'm conscious of the time, Carl, so maybe I won't do that. I'll maybe hold it till the questions, is the, and this one's very close to home, is the settler story. The idea about coming here, settling the land, and entirely overlooking the profound displacement and unsettlement of mana whenua that had to take place in order that my people could form a community around the Taranaki coast, which they referred to as the settler community. This is another story which I think could benefit from some interrogation.
And great to see the comments in the chat. I'm reminded of Moana Jackson in his interview with He Tohu speaking about the greatest myth take was that iwi and hapu voluntarily gave up all their authority to another group, which was not something that any peoples have seen or done in history more broadly. So some of the other comments that are in the chat around strategies to answer. So there's some questions coming through in the chat about how to respond to some of these myths that we're speaking to Richard and Glenn, and there's also some resources being shared in the chat. And a gathering at the gate is a event or group helping tauiwi look and understand their ancestry and work with that. There's Tauiwi Tautoko from Action Station, which is about helping support responding to people online. So I'll just highlight those resources, but there is a really great question here, which is it seems to be that many Pākehā myths and legends serve to both hide and construct a sense of collective identity that can be divorced from their own histories. How has your journey into your own history affected your sense of identity, and in what ways?
Yes, look, probably one of the things I would want to say from my experience most clearly is that having a crack at the myths and legends is not about pulling Pākehā down. It's not about pulling everything down. It's about actually finding what it is to be, for me, more fully Pākehā. In my experience, in my relationship with Māori up north, in my work as a GP, Māori have always been kind to me and turned me back round to look more fully at myself, to ask the questions they ask of themselves. What's your whakapapa? Where do you come from? And if you answer that question, you go into the myths and legends and you go looking, then you find out who you are. And I think if we don't question orthodoxies, if we don't question stereotypes, if we don't question myths and legends, we remain flat as people, the inheritors of other people's definitions of ourselves. So to be more fully Pākehā, we must always argue against the orthodoxies of ourselves, to know ourselves. The hardest thing, I've written about this before, the thing that took me longest as a Pākehā was to see myself, because there's no contrast. I'm white on white. It's not till I went to a small, papakainga in Northland that I saw that I was white, that I saw that I didn't speak Te Reo Māori, that I saw how important Te Reo Māori was as a language and of this place, of this landscape. So there was no contrast. So I think having a crack at the myths and legends, asking ourselves, what have I just assumed about? What are the assumptions underneath this conclusion I have? Have I probed the pillars I've just come to this decision about? And if you haven't, then joy awaits for you, and pain. It hurts. It hurts, and you have to let go of things. But what you find under that is more solid ground, I think. So, yeah, for me, whether it's the orthodoxy of the church I leave, whether it's the orthodoxy of some of these myths and legends that I grew up with, that you've just talked about, Carl, for me, it makes us more fully. I've always been curious as a writer to know how to tell stories of my people. And to me, that's always been about questioning the assumptions and digging down deeper. And yeah, there's always more solid ground there. It's not a destructive process, and it's a release. It's a release of when you inherit other people's ideas. You always got to pay a tax, an emotional tax to them. Whereas if you probe these things and come to your own conclusions, live in your own journey, then you don't have to pay that tax, I could this is where I start to ramble, so I will just shut up.
You just keep on rambling, Glenn. We all bought our sleeping bags.
I can see the light going out of people's eyes.
I would echo that. I couldn't put it as well, but I would echo that. It's a generative process, I think. I mean, you can do it. You can live in this country if you are Pākehā and remain in what Rachel Buchanan, who's one of the great writers around everything, really, specifically Parihaka. Rachel and I did operatic stuff when we were kids in Ngamutu. She was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and I was a fairly shit tin man. But she went on to become a great scholar. She has whakapapa connections to Te Atiawa and Taranaki and Te Ao Pākehā as well. She talks about the dementia wing of our colonial history. And I certainly spent 50 odd years in that dementia wing quite happily with a lot of other really nice people, unquestioning people, and the only sounds you hear in the dementia wing is the sound of your own storytelling, set of stories, punching above our weight, all that stuff. But nothing happened to me when I stepped out of the dementia wing. I don't think I was that keen to do it. I can't even really understand why it happened, but I don't recall it. It hasn't been anything other than a positive experience. I feel, and Avril Bell, who many of us know, has written about this really beautifully as well. It isn't as if I would claim connections to Taranaki, which would rely upon me claiming stolen land. I wouldn't do that. But my relationship with that place and this country more generally is much more informed and much more thoughtful than it had previously been. And the other thing I would say, to echo what Glenn has said, is that all along the way, I have encountered absolutely nothing but grace from Te Ao Māori. The pissed off people, the angry people, they've been all on the honky side. don't question your past because you're disrespecting your ancestors, whatever. This is all part of the mythology as well. So the disaffection and the anger and the aggression, that has all come from Te Ao Pākehā. From Te Ao Māori, there's been nothing in my experience except grace and patience and good humor as well. And I think that tells me a lot. So I would absolutely endorse what Glenn has said. It hasn't necessarily always been a joyful experience, but it has absolutely been a generative one for me.
I'm going to join a couple of questions here together. From your perspectives, what might be some of the key traits of positive Pākehātanga? And also, there's a comment here with a question about, as you've touched on, the myths that inform both narrative and power discourses, and that Pākehā culture, in your opinion, is broadly dishonest on many fronts. How do we address this, and how do we engage in the authenticity aspects that you spoke to and address dishonesty on the other hand?
To that second one, Carl, I reckon the easiest thing to do is just find the Waitangi Tribunal report from your place and read the executive summary. That would take care of quite a lot of it, I think. I mean, more broadly, just thinking back to the hikoi down to Te Whanganui Atara, what was it, sort of almost 2 years ago now, in opposition to the treaty principles legislation. Vincent O'Malley had a little placard, and on it he had simply written in black marker pen, "Read some bloody history." That's kind of it, really. I mean, you read the words written by people like Glen and others, but I think you just read some history. It isn't difficult to access now. It's straightforward. There's a lot of it there. You don't have to read all 3 volumes of the Waitangi Tribunal's reports on Ngaitahu, but if you just read the executive summary for something like the Kemp Purchase, and you come from that part of the world and you think, well, the land wars happened up in the North Island, not down there in the South, that will reframe things, I think. So it can be just as Therese Crocker would say, Tautoko, read some history, because she is an actual historian. But she is right. In fact, you should read things that Therese Crocker has written as well. But just read some history. I think that's been the most obvious thing for me, and the easiest thing to do, the most accessible thing to do. And that has just allowed for a more informed engagement with some of those myths and legends, which I happily lived by for 50 odd years.
And I think to answer to take the first part of the question, what are some positive aspects of Pākehātanga? And I guess for me, I love being an inheritor of that wide Western liberal tradition, that Western science has grown out of. Not that it's the only science in the world, but it gives us a beautiful view of the world. And also, if you read, Western history and the history of Western liberal thought, then this is what it does. It questions everything. It has broken away from itself multiple times. And so what we're doing, in a sense, by questioning the myths and legends, is being more fully Pākehā. There are many Pākehā ancestors who have done this over and over and over again. And yeah, I did some research into one of the first doctors who ever came here, Ernst Diefenbach, and he came on the Tory of all boats, with Wakefield, and he was used by Wakefield to survey the land, so the New Zealand company could know what to buy up. And at the end of that process, Diefenbach wrote a really prescient essay warning Māori of the dangers of colonisation to them. So right back at the beginning, and he fell out with Wakefield, and because of that. And so, yeah, I think actually it's not just Māori who turn us around, our own ancestors turn us around. Yeah, our ancestors turn around and say, always question the assumption beneath what you're about to say.
Yeah. Actually, Carl, can I just very quickly add something? I think that's brilliant advice. What Glenn has said is both it's historically accurate, it's scientifically accurate, it's also really good advice. And John Stuart Mill, who is the Hall of Famer as far as classical liberal theory goes, begins life as a mate of, well, not life, his scholarly life as a mate of Wakefield. He buys land as part of the colonial project in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But by the end of his life, Mill has just broken, theoretically, with colonisation as an imperial project. He's disillusioned, he's pissed off. And what really gets Mill, which I find fascinating, up by what Glenn was saying, was that he looks at the greed and the avarice of some of the Pākehā who come to this place, and they either steal Māori land, but they call it confiscation, which seems to me a benign word for a terrible act, or they purchase it at knockdown prices, like with the Kemp purchase. And he says, yeah, no, that's not really what it was about, and that isn't what equal treatment is about. So when that phrase, which can also be a myth, I think, when it's weaponized by aspects or elements on the political right, the author of the phrase reaches a point in his theoretical life where he says, this doesn't work in the context of colonization. It might work in the UK circa the mid-1900s. It doesn't work when it gets deployed out here in different historical and cultural circumstances. So I think it's good. It's good advice from Glenn, just to have a think about what the Western tradition itself can do by way of self-reflection.
We've got a couple of minutes left. You've already touched on some overall points, Glenn, about your journey overall and being enriched by it. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish up with for the session to share?
Couple of quick points. Relationships really important. I love it. Relationships between Pākehā and Māori, this is where we can work out these things, relationships, such a great way. And I think a lot of the time where the darkness is and the stereotypical thoughts are, they don't survive the light of relationship with people who are Māori. And that in my life, the myths didn't survive the light of people in my life like Auntie Rongo and Auntie Huia and Auntie Kari. The myths just didn't survive those queer, They forced me to question, and sometimes myths are signs that there hasn't been enough relationship. The second thing is that, I've just, been looking at the health system on a completely different kaupapa, and the more I, with a colleague, and the more we look into who's doing health really well, it's the iwi providers that are really innovative when it comes to, remarkably innovative when it comes to reaching the communities, their own communities. And again, attacking that myth that somehow Pākehā or the West knows better how to set up primary care, because I think actually Māori know everything I've looked at over the last couple of years, deep diving into this, makes me think Māori know better, and that most Pākehā I know would prefer to be patients in an iwi provider practice than take their chances in the way primary care is most of the time now. So I think that's another myth that's quite close to my heart, that Māori can't organise things, do things, that they can't outthink us. They certainly are in primary care.
Richard?
Margaret, I'm just looking at your post from earlier on when you say that you are 80 like Colenso, and it's people your age who are weaponising the words spoken and so on and so forth. And I absolutely take your point. But I think also there is a sense that I get through the work that I do, which is largely with much younger people, that some of the myths and legends that we've touched on today are fading from the world, or fading from their world. Some of these don't have the same salience, I think, amongst some younger people. I wouldn't want to generalize by generation. I think that's unhelpful. But, many of the people who I work with in the course of my day job would just say, yeah, no, sure, of course we're not this or we're not that. That's sort of obvious to them. So I feel hopeful and I feel optimistic about the work that the rangatahi are doing for themselves, and we will be the beneficiaries of that. I appreciate that we live in a challenging political moment, but I don't think that's accidental. I think the challenging political moment is a reaction to or a response to the progress that has been made, including by people on this call, organisations that have been referenced on this call. And I think the last thing I'd say is that stepping back into some of those myths and legends and reflecting on your own people, whether your people came here 5 years ago or 175 years ago, can only ever end one way, and it's a good way. It can end with a stronger sense of where you come from and a stronger understanding of the bases on which you stand in this land at this time. So I think I'd leave it at that, Carl.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for your vulnerability, your sharing and reflections. There's lots of great comments in the chat. And yeah, there's still some questions there. We're always going to have some more questions. I thought I'd just, before we close up, just bring up our, there's just, if you want to follow up with some of the, follow more of some of what these good men are doing, there's some reference to their links to their websites. Glenn's most recent 2 books, Ngā Wahine Toru, 3 Women, and Glen, Legends of the Ancient Pākehā, and for Richard too, those resources there as well. Recent books and one that's coming out next month. So yeah, appreciate you both. Thank you for our wonderful volunteers online who are supporting this, and for the others who are part of the other sessions. Go and check those out. Thank you to our sponsors and the organisations who are supporting this. And we started with a poem. And Glenn, I want to invite you to close us out with a poem, finish us up.
Thanks, Carl, and thanks, Richard. Lovely to chat and hear your views, and thanks to everyone for coming along and for your fantastic comments too. And I know I'm going to have like a bad next 2 hours thinking of all the things I should have said or should have said better, because you know, after an hour you're just getting going. One thing I would say is that Myths and Legends of the Ancient Pākehā, my book that Carl talked about, really it was a search for me for the songs I could sing as a Pākehā on marae rather than singing Elvis all the time, you know. So I went back to Pākehā history and found ways I could sing about it. And it made me realise that so often Pākehā have not sung to Māori. Māori have sung to Pākehā for generations, but Pākehā have not shown there's a deep vulnerability in us when we sing, when we simply stand and sing. But we always want to know and control and be, yeah, and I think by not singing, we've lost our vulnerability. So my journey, one of the journeys for me with Māori has been to learn to sing again, because I would never have thought of myself as singing as a young Pākehā man. So I've been working on some nursery rhymes. I don't know, another myth. Kiwis, they're cool birds, but I kind of like the kuaka, the godwits most, these brave little birds. And I think they characterize us, trying to tie these two cultures together in a way that brings justice and legitimacy to both ways. And I like it because they only ever live in summer, you know, and they're about to fly off. It's March, the godwits are leaving, you know. So a small offering of the godwits, a mihi to the godwits, with this small sung poem. I'll sing it in Te Reo Māori and then recite it to you in English. E kuaka e, kei te timu te tai nei. Me tikaro mai, me tikaro rā, hei tupu, Hei mōmona, pokaia mai o pārirau, ki a mau ai raua, i te piringa o tāku ringa e. Tāri a te wā, ka rere koe, mā kupe anō e whai e. Ka huri te maria ki te rangi e, mau mātou e ka we. He kohanga au, tauti toki rā, he kohanga koe. He kohanga au, tauti toki rā, he kohanga koe. Kuaka, where this tide ebbs, pick your way carefully, from here to there. Feed, grow fat. Fold up your wings and let me hold you in the harbour of my hand. Soon you will rise. Kupe himself will follow. The people turn their faces to the sky. Then you will carry us. For now, I am your nest. One day, you will be mine. Kia ora. Maybe I should have just done a prayer. Yeah.
Kia ora, Glenn. Ka kite koutou.